This story is called Grandfather's Story Cloak. It's written by Linda Gerdner with help from Sarah Langford, and it was illustrated by Stuart Loughridge. This is a story about the Hmong people. The Hmong are a community of people who came primarily from Laos, Thailand, Vietnam, and southern China, and have come to the United States as immigrants and often as refugees. Michigan has the fifth largest population of Hmong residents, about 5,000 in Detroit, about 1,000 in Lansing. The states with the biggest population of Hmong immigrants are California, Minnesota, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and then Michigan. This is also a story about Alzheimer's, a disease in which people begin to lose their memories. Author Linda Gerdner is a registered nurse who grew up in Iowa, and as a nurse, she became very interested in helping her patients who suffered from Alzheimer's. At the time this book was published, Sarah Langford was in nursing school at Johns Hopkins University, and she was very interested in the healthcare needs of immigrant populations and of refugees. So these two women from the nursing profession collaborated in writing their first book for young readers. Linda Gerdner had written lots of professional articles, but never a book for young readers. And the illustrations were done by an artist who works in St. Paul, Minnesota. This was his first children's book, Stuart Loughridge. Shen's Books in California published this edition, and it has English on the left side of each page and the Hmong mean language on the right side of the page. Shersheng ran home from school. He couldn't wait to show grandfather his third grade art project. But grandfather was nowhere in the house. Shersheng worried that grandfather had wandered outside and lost his way. The door to the backyard had been left open. Shersheng went to close it and saw grandfather outside. "Grandfather, what are you doing?" Instead of weeding his garden or trimming the bitter melon vines, grandfather was gathering branches. "We need wood," said grandfather. "Come, I need help. We must start a fire." "Why do we need a fire?" "To cook dinner, of course. How else could we cook?" Shersheng sighed. He knew that grandfather had forgotten about mother cooking dinner on the gas stove. When grandfather first started forgetting, father had built a tall fence and installed a sturdy gate with a special latch so grandfather would remain safe in the yard. Shersheng pointed. "Look, there's the last bitter melon. Do you want to pick it?" "Ah, my favorite. Come on, let us see if it is ripe." Grandfather put aside the branches. He held the long, bumpy vegetable in both hands like it was newfound treasure. "Not yet ready for harvest." Mother called, "Dinner's ready." Filling a bowl of bitter melon soup made just for grandfather, Mother said, "Shersheng, make sure you wash before you eat." Shersheng helped his little brother, to wash his hands in the bathroom and help set the table. Mother said, "Father, don't forget to wash your hands." As grandfather returned from the bathroom, Shersheng asked him, "What do you think of my art project?" "Nice." Grandfather slurped his soup so loudly that Shersheng knew he was happy. Then Shersheng noticed the sound of running water from the bathroom. He leapt up to turn off the faucet, but it was too late. Left by the sink, Tu's blanket was soaked. Tu began to cry when he saw his wet blanket. "Oh, it's just a little water," scolded Shersheng. "It's not a big deal. Stop being a baby." Grandfather had forgotten to turn off the water again. One never knew what grandfather would forget. Later that night, a great shout from grandfather's room woke Shersheng and his parents, and they all ran to his bedside. "What's wrong?" asked Shersheng, frightened. "Where am I? I want to go home." Grandfather sat up in his bed. He pointed to mother and father. "Who are you?" Before they could answer, grandfather turned to Shersheng. "Fang, what are you doing here?" "Oh, grandfather, don't you recognize me?" "Fang, why are you calling me grandfather? You are my younger brother." "I'm Shersheng. I'm your grandson." "Oh, what nonsense. I have no grandson." Shersheng couldn't believe his ears. He blinked away sudden tears and ran to his room. In the past year, grandfather had done so many forgetful things, like leaving the water running or leaving the back door open. But this was the worst. Grandfather had never forgotten Shersheng. Shersheng sat on his bed and felt hot moisture well in his eyes, but the tears would not fall. He did the only thing that always made him feel better. He drew. "What are you making?" Mother asked as she entered the room. "I'm drawing me and grandfather, like he used to be. Grandfather who knows my name. I want him back." Shersheng focused on drawing grandfather's smile. Mother gave him a big hug. "I have something for you." It was a picture of grandfather smiling and holding a baby. Shersheng asked, Is that baby too?" "No, this baby is you." Grandfather was so proud. His first grandson. He kept saying it over and over again. "He will always love you." "But he forgot my name." Shersheng wiped away the wet from his eyes. Mother said, "The doctors say he has Alzheimer's disease, so his brain is slowing down. That's why sometimes he can't remember your name or my name or Daddy's name or little Two's name." "Can't we speed his brain back up?" "I wish we could, but Alzheimer's is more complicated. It will be difficult for him to remember and think. So grandfather will not get better. He will only grow more confused. We must continue to love and respect him, even when he does not remember." Mother looked at Shersheng's art. "Your drawing is getting much better." "This reminds me." She left the room. She came back with a large blue cloth. "What's that?" asked Shersheng. He had never seen it before. "Many years before you were born, grandfather made this story cloth. It shows his life in Laos. He has sacrificed so much for our family. After I married your father, grandfather gave me guardianship of this story cloth. Now that you're 10, you can take care of it too." Shersheng and mother unfolded the blue cloth. And because the Hmong people went for centuries without their own version of a written language, this tradition of the story cloth was a way to tell stories about people's lives. The next day after school, Shersheng was drawing with Two when Two said suddenly, "Grandfather's stupid." "Grandfather's not stupid. He just forgets," said Shersheng. "You're only 3, too little to remember grandfather before he started forgetting." "He's always forgetting. He's useless." Annoyed, Shersheng went to his room, brought back the story cloth, and unfolded it on the coffee table. "Grandfather's not useless. He made this." Shesheng pointed to the one word stitched on the cloth. That's Laos, his old country. But Tu was not impressed. This cloth is silly. I like my blanket better. Shesheng was about to say Tu was silly when mother and grandfather arrived from the kitchen. Nap time, mother announced, and carried Tu away. Shesheng pointed at the story cloth and asked grandfather, "Why is she stepping on the seesaw?" Grandfather's finger followed Shesheng's. "This is a rice pounder. We used it to remove the husk from the rice. I was a simple farmer, and every farmer pounded rice. Every day I awoke to the second crow of the rooster, farmed the land from dawn until dusk, and respected the spirits. I grew rice, corn, and pumpkin to feed my family, and bitter melon, especially for my grandparents. We cooked our meals on an open fire. Life was peaceful and good." "Who are those men in green?" "Soldiers. They burned our houses and destroyed our crops." Grandfather sighed. "Oh, many Hmong were forced to fight." "Did you fight?" "Yes, I needed to protect my family and our way of life. But the soldiers were too strong. We had to leave our highland home and escape through the jungle. Many family and friends died, including my brothers, Ger and Fang." His voice wobbled at the names. He closed his eyes. "I'm sorry." Shesheng slipped his hand against grandfather's rough fingers and squeezed. What happened after the war? It was not safe to live in Laos, so we crossed the river to Thailand. For 5 years, we lived in a refugee camp with many families, sharing a barrack house and a small garden. We made story cloths. You made this cloth in Thailand? Yes. We sold the story cloths, and the money we earned paid for food, medicine, and clothing. We were homesick for Laos, but also hopeful to go to America. Shesheng traced the little stitched people who had survived the terrible war. Your trip to America is not in your story cloth. Why don't you make a new story cloth? Grandfather's rough, knotted fingers moved along the story cloth's border like a blind person's fingers reading Braille. He shook his head as he stood. I have left my sewing behind. The next day, Shesheng raced home from school to hear more of grandfather's stories. Shesheng opened the door to the backyard and saw grandfather in the garden on his hands and knees. Wait, Shesheng, mother said. I think we should leave grandfather alone. But he's picking vegetables just like he used to. He's back. I'm afraid not. He is burying the silver bar that he brought with him from Laos. Like treasure? Yes, treasure to keep safe for his family. Mother nodded. Except he thinks he is in Laos, not America. Shesheng felt a weight settle on his shoulders, like when he gave Tu a piggyback ride. Grandfather was forgetting again. Shesheng went to his room to draw, but this time even drawing didn't make him feel better. He took out grandfather's story cloth and spread it on his bed. But that didn't make him feel better either. He knew that grandfather would never be the same. Shesheng gazed out into the backyard where he could see some weeds in the flower beds. Grandfather used to tend the garden daily before he started forgetting. The last bitter melon still hung on the vine. Then Sher Sheng had an idea. He worked for hours. He cut, colored, drew, folded, and glued. He finished before dinner and rushed to the family room. "Look what I made." "What's going on?" Mother came from the kitchen. Shersheng unfolded his creation. "Look, I made our family's story collage. That's you, Grandfather, coming to America. That's me. That's Mother and Father. That's two. This is our house, your garden, and we are growing vegetables." Shersheng pointed at the photograph at the center of the collage. "That's you and me when I was a baby. These are your American memories." "Oh, how wonderful," Mother exclaimed. "Father, what do you think?" With a square finger, Grandfather traced the faded photograph of himself coming to America. "How far I have traveled," said Grandfather, softly. "I have not seen my homeland in over 20 years. "Do you want to go back?" asked Shersheng, remembering Grandfather's bravery and sacrifice during the war. Grandfather sighed and closed his eyes for so long, Shersheng thought he had forgotten the question. "I will always keep Laos safe in my heart," said Grandfather. "But my true home is with my family, with you, and you are all here. As long as you are safe, I am happy." Shersheng felt a warmth spread through his body. "Grandfather, we are all safe and filled with happy memories." These 2 pages are for grown-ups or big brothers and big sisters, parents, grandparents. On the left is a lot of good information that explains Alzheimer's disease and how it affects people. On the right, there's information that's entitled More About the Hmong and Story Cloths, and you can read a little bit about that tradition among the Hmong people. It's hard work to write a book and to do the illustrations, and it costs money to get a book published. Help with that came from the Extendicare Foundation, a nonprofit organization that works with older populations and has a commitment to helping research and education concerning Alzheimer's. Based on true stories, taking a look at Hmong residents here in the United States and taking a look at people who have to deal with Alzheimer's, this is the end of Grandfather's Story Cloth. Written by Linda Gerdner with help from Sarah Langford, with illustrations by Stuart Loughridge, this book has been Grandfather's Story Cloth.